Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome back to Homeschool Together. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have a chance, if you haven't already, head down into the show notes below and go ahead and click on that YouTube link and go ahead and hit subscribe. That'd be wonderful. As well as clicking on the Gumroad link if you're trying to find ways to support the podcast. But the best way you can do that is to give it to a new family. Point them to the podcast, point them to the YouTube channel. We know there's a lot of new families getting ready to kick off their first homeschool year.
This is like a funny time of year for me because it's like this mass exodus time when the school year ends and there's those families who are like, okay, they white knuckled it, they made it to the end of the school year and they're like, we're not going back, or they're so excited because they just got to the end of their child's pre-K year and they're ready to finally start kindergarten and they're really ready to jump in. So
they just watched their preschooler walk down the aisle in a little cap and gown to songs. That wasn't us this weekend, Aaron.
Yeah, there were some tears. So it's kind of cool because you have these two moments of people who are like these people that are like fleeing and looking for a different path, and then people who are just excited to jump into something that they've been preparing for, or maybe not. Maybe you were like planning to send your kiddo to kindergarten, and now you're like, oh no, we're shifting gears and we're going to homeschool. Yeah. And there's some parents who are also taking this as a time to. This is the summer and it's like, well, we signed them up for kindergarten, but we're just going to homeschool this summer. We're going to see how it goes. And, if we like it, maybe we won't go back. So there's some people that are curious. There's some people that are really excited. There's some people that are fleeing a situation that wasn't working for them or their kids. So this is just like this big influx time of everyone. So welcome. For whatever reason you're here, or if you've been here for years and you're just like, Matt and Eric, get through the spiel. We want to get to the good stuff. But yeah, welcome. We're always happy to have new folks. And if you've got challenges, we have such a terrific and supportive Facebook group. Oh yeah, it's really weird because I feel like a lot of Facebook groups get really toxic, and ours, I knock on all the wood, is just such a lovely group. You
guys are wonderful. Keep it good.
So if you're new and you're like, I don't know where to get, somebody told me to do this podcast, but I don't know. I have all these questions. These people in this Facebook group are fantastic. Yep. So yeah, ask your questions, and it's a really supportive environment.
Absolutely. So Arrow, like the start of anything, we are doing a looping schedule, looping back after 2 years of going out and doing our own thing. We're looping back. Can you give them the Star Wars initial scroll screen of what we have done in the past?
Yes, it was a turbulent time for the Republic. No,
it was a tough time for the Booza household.
No. So we have 2 daughters. We have one who's 8.5, one who has just turned 5. Oh, dear. She's finally 5. And we did an around the world journey where we combined the 2 kind of literature type curriculums of Build Your Library and Torchlight. Kinder together, and we did that, and it was this mega year and a half around the world. We did all the countries and all the things,
and we vlogged our way around, and you can watch those videos
if you want to know, like country by country. We vlogged all of that and gave you we read so many books, you guys, to give you the best recommendations, and we made these resource guides for every continent that will give you tons of movies and YouTube videos and books, games and recipes. And just all kinds of resources
for every single country.
Yeah, if you want to bolt that onto one of those curriculums, or you want to just make a unit study on your own and you want to pick that up, it's at our Gumroad store, so you can check the link. And you can pick those up. So we did all of that. So we did this whole thing with our kindergartner, and then at that time we just had a little peanut. And then we got done with that, and we decided like, okay, this comboing thing, because I'm a crazy planner person. I don't know why I do this to myself, but I was like, hey, we're going to jump into ancient civilizations with Build Your Library 1. We really like Build Your Library. We like the flow, the structure, the quality literature. We were really happy with that. But gosh darn it, before we get to ancient civilizations, we better go through some prehistory. We got to figure out how the universe was formed, and the dinosaurs and the primordial soup and all the things, right? So we decided to combine Build Your Library's short 6-week prehistory unit study with Blossom and Roots year 3 science extension, which was like 13 weeks. And we put those together, and we did kind of a mega, I think it ended up being like 18 weeks total, 18 or 19 weeks of prehistory. And when we got done with, which we also vlogged our entire way through it on YouTube. If you're interested in prehistory stuff, you can go check that out. And then we got done with that, and we were like, okay, cool. We're finally ready for ancients. And at this point, our younger daughter was like, almost 4, and our older daughter was almost 7, or right at 7. We're like, okay, cool. This is a good time. We did Build Your Library 1, Ancient Civilizations, and we did that, and we did not combo anything. Now, of course, we added extra resources and extra fun and extra food, because we love the food, all kinds of things. So, and we vlogged our way through that. So we've done all of that, and now we're at this point. This is a glorious point we waited for, when we could get our children on the same Build Your Library level. Yes. Because I don't know about y'all. I have heard families doing, I don't know how you'd even do 2 Build Your Library levels at the same time.
No way.
But I have heard of families doing 3 different levels at once, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't be doing geography with one kid and Middle Ages with the other and American history with the other. I think if you are doing that with your family, you are a rock star, because I can't imagine.
Yeah, post your receipts. I want to see your screenshots of your library holds.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how. It's one thing, I think, when you're doing geography and maybe history.
Yeah, right.
And I've heard some people, and I think this is very intriguing, who are doing history and they are doing country studies, like they're studying the ancient history or, medieval history, or whatever level of history they're at. And they're also doing kind of a modern geography thing. I think that is very intriguing. I'm going to think about that our next ancients, maybe to bring back in that kind of modern culture piece. So yeah, but we're excited to put these kids on the same level. And what we decided to do, because we just really like Build Your Library. I think that, Torchlight's got some really interesting books. We definitely have a lot of those books, and we will use some of them because they do have a really interesting book list. But the Build Your Library books they're just solid.
Yeah. Now that we've made the decision to go back to the around the world journey that we've already done.
We got to dub this. We were spitballing. We got to talk about it. It's going to be called I don't know, globetrotting,
no.
homeschool.
Okay, so here you go.
Jet setting. I don't know. We got to come up with something different.
This will release before we start the vlogging of our weeks. We're going to let the people decide what it's called. So if you have a good name for this series of Around the World Journey.
Because we can't call it Around the World Journey anymore, because we already did that. And
yeah.
when we refer to that, which happened 3 years ago or whatever, we want to...
We're thinking globetrotting, but let's let the people make decisions. Go ahead and make a suggestion.
Tell us, y'all, what should we call this?
Yeah, put it in the comments or put it on the Facebook group.
So basically, we're excited to get these guys on the same level. And what we're going to do is we're going to track through the levels, and of course, adding other things, using our youngest to set the pace. Because what we found is, you can always make things harder. You can always make things more complex, or, add more dimensions to them, or add more work or whatever. But it's really hard to make these easier. So, you kind of have this minimum level before, a kiddo is able to even understand what's going on.
No, it's a great point.
Be interested.
I couldn't imagine taking ancient civilizations and then making that for a younger learner. I can imagine you can do it.
We kind of did it, right? Yeah. We did it with our 8-year-old, and our 4-year-old was tag along.
But some of the reading selections and the chapter books and things of that nature were, I think, a little elevated to where our kindergartner is. Maybe not so in maybe a year, but right now, I don't think she could handle that. So you're right. The fact that you're saying it's easier to level up than it is to level down. It's sort of like that thing where if you're hot you can only take off so many clothes. But if you're cold, you can just layer up. And it's kind of that idea where like we can always go up and make it more complex.
Right,
And that's what we have chosen to do here.
At some point, you'll be the kid from Christmas Story. You can't move in
course.
their coat. But,
Oh, Ralphie, help me.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, that basically, and while our younger did come along with our Ancients year, she didn't understand most of it. And I honestly would even venture to say that like that being at first grade level, quote unquote, it was pretty young too. Like I think our elevated second grader, because she's a little bit old for second grade because of her birthday, I think like she was actually prime age to start that. I think younger would even be harder. So yeah, it's one of those things where I think that if we just pace it with our younger, then, and right now we're going to keep going with Build Your Library, and we may pull in other pieces from, I really love Blossom and Root Science, and I do think we're going to pull that in, and we'll talk about it when we do it, because I think that that's just it's so well done.
This is the space science for kindergarten.
Yeah, the kindergarten space science. I think we fully intend to do that, but we're not gonna start that quite right now. Take on one new thing at a time.
So let's talk about so we did the combo last time. That took us about 70 something weeks to do. If you think about it, that's about a year and a quarter. It was like a year and a quarter, year and a half.
63.
So we have made the decision to go with just the Build Your Library. And if you're thinking we're going to be doing the same thing again that we did before, it's not. We're doing a lot of things and we'll talk about them today. But this is we're going to take a similar path through. We're not going to be following the curriculum canonically as she put it together.
Yeah.
You have gone through and done a huge mapping, custom mapping, and you have
can't resist.
Yeah, you have thought about this curriculum using Build Your Library as kind of this kind of loose backbone, and then we have begun to layer it on, and we've put a couple themes in that we want to hold all the way through. And the first theme is experiences. And I think that's the first thing you've thought about. And so as you sat down and looked at all the countries, you started to say, okay, we have a large metropolitan area in this area, very diverse, very culturally diverse. Lots of different people live in this region, Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of opportunities to see and experience different cultures around the world right here in our backyard. Now, we know some people, maybe living in a rural area, you may not have access to a metropolitan area where you may have those opportunities. That is totally fine. But we're just going to be showcasing something different. We're going to be doing something different and showing how we evolve this, as well as bringing an older student along with us and making changes and putting in additional layers to account for her age and the requirements that she's going to need to help move her forward. Because we don't want to give a kindergarten curriculum, we've talked about this between us, to a second grader or a rising third grader. She's coming into a third grader, and it would be boring for her. And we have to add things in there that are more complex. But going around the world, doing things with countries, you can easily level up that content.
Absolutely.
Easily level up the books. So we have gone through, and you went through and you tried to find a lot of popular cultural events, places, activities, and things of that nature that are in our area. And you began to look at the time schedules with them. Some of them are time sensitive because they're a festival or they're a food get together or something of that nature. And you began to map out through the year where we can put these things. Yeah. And then you began to insert other countries in that are maybe like culturally relevant at that time. Yep. For example, the Olympics are coming up. So we're going to do France while we are watching the Olympics and things of that nature.
Right. So one of the things that we really want to do this time is kind of just like bring it, bring a more personal aspect of it. And so I think the experiences really helps with that. And like you said, because we're going to do France when the Paris Olympics are happening this summer, we clearly can't do the order of Build Your Library. So we're not doing the continent by continent. We're going to hop all around, which is a little a la Torchlight. Yep. We're going to use a lot of the books, but we really want to focus on the experience piece. And so the experience piece for us, as we've defined it between us, is that it's something that we're going to do that is either something we can go to physically or something that we can watch that is live or something that we can do at home to make it an event. So, for example, we went ahead and put Brazil when Carnival is happening, and we want to watch Carnival live, and that's going to be the experience part of it. We're going to get dressed up, and we're going to
Dance through the house.
and we're going to have wonderful Brazilian food that we're going to make, and we're going to watch Carnival, and that's how we're going to do that. So I went through the whole year, and I found, and some of the things are like watch it on TV. Obviously, the Olympics was watched on TV. Some of them, like I found near us, for example, one of our early weeks is going to be Colombia and Peru. There's a Colombian food truck that's not that far from my office, and you guys are going to meet me for lunch, and we're going to go and have Colombian food for lunch, and that's going to be our experience. So it doesn't have to be like a huge thing. We did find other weeks where there's like an Italian festival. There are Highland games. There are, some different things that we can go experience in this area that are like much bigger events. We have some Diwali festivals, stuff that's here that we want to try to go to. There's also...
There's like a German town across the mountains from us.
Right.
Yeah, things of that nature.
There's Dia de los Muertos. There's Chinese New Year stuff. So we tried to put things where it kind of made sense and then fit in other things that gave us some good contrasts, because we did the continent by continent before, and while I really like that for a young learner, I think the hopping will be a little bit more exciting. So, and I've heard people say that about Torchlight. They liked that. They liked that they were
something fresh, something new.
Yeah, something fresh. Whereas instead of being like, we've been in South America for 3 months, and like,
and we did notice that about the round the world journey, that you not that you get quote unquote stuck in an area, but sometimes a lot of continents will be very homogenous. And not saying that every country in South America is exactly the same, but they have a lot of the same myths and cultural things. And it's hard to find the interest, like something that's unique. I mean, you can do historical stuff, you can do some cultural stuff, but everything ends up kind of being like they all the same language, they all do those type of things. We had this issue, I think, when we were in Eastern Europe last time. You like in Africa too, we had a lot of we had to bundle areas of Africa and put like 5 or 6 countries together and just kind of cover that region, because it would be too hard to hit every single country. There's just not a lot of content there in some places, like books for this country versus this country.
Yeah, it could be really tough.
You end up just finding books of that region that talk about certain things. There's a lot of challenges there, and I like this jumping because it will keep it fresh. I think it will keep it fun. I think, at least for our younger learner, I think it's going to be more in tune with what she likes. I think our older one was more go with the flow.
Well, and I think that's exactly what I was thinking, is like our older daughter is very happy to do these deep immersive dives. She's happy to be doing the same thing for 2 months. But our younger daughter, really, she's going to want to switch it up. So I think definitely whichever way you and your kiddos are focused is maybe which way you should go with it. So that's the first big change is the experiences. The second thing that we wanted to do was a special project for our older learner. We looked at like the animal stuff that they have with Build Your Library, and then there's kind of a write-up, like couple paragraph or whatever about a famous person or a landmark or something that was from Torchlight. And we're like, well, neither of those really seemed interesting to her. And so instead, the idea, we'll see how this pans out, but the idea is for her to put together a travel guide for every country or group of countries or whatever that we study. And that travel guide is going to have what we would do on a 2-week trip to that country. Where would we go? What would we eat? How would we get there?
How expensive
and
it is.
what would it cost?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so
she's like a travel guide or a travel
like
agent.
a travel agent. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we did a little test run with the Google Home because we don't want her just like on the internet researching and stuff. We have, of course, books where she can look up the things we would go see and how to spell and everything. But we asked Google Home, like, hey Google, what's the average cost of a flight from Seattle to Munich or whatever? And it was able to give us, hey Google, what's the average daily amount that a tourist would spend in Beijing? And it will give us that. So like, I think she's like, okay, so we got a little bit of math in there. Yep. And then she's going to basically...
A lot of writing. Yep.
A lot of writing. She's going to basically sell us on where she would go. And this is going to be her project to put together in a binder and we're going to have all of the countries at some point. So we're making a Canva template for it, which I'll be happy to share once we get it, tweaked correctly, if it's something that interests you. But something that she could put that together, and then that would be her kind of way to do a little bit more research on her own. Doesn't take as much of our time to do, like, because otherwise, having them together on the same level is great, but then you bolt on too many extra things for the upper level learner, and then it's, you might as well do two different, you're adding all this time.
Your time you're going to be spending helping your older student do those activities may outweigh the effort that you're doing with the younger one. I think with the younger one, we're going to be doing a lot of reading. There's going to be a chapter book we're reading. There's the passport activity, which comes from, I think, the Build Your Library. Yeah. There's some map work that we're doing as well, which I think is part of the Build Your Library. And then we're doing some food. And then I think we're going to try, if applicable, do a kind of a dinner and a movie on Sunday to kind of launch the week. So we have some ideas on like what we're going to be doing with our younger one through the week. It was really the ideas of like, okay, what do we have to add on for our older one?
Basically we're going to for each country, take the pieces of Build Your Library that we can, not the nature study things, not anything science, but just the country stuff. And, if we like it, if it works, and if our learner's interested in it, we'll do that for our younger. But you're right. Like, what do we bolt on for the older? And then for the older, we also need, now she's pretty happy with reading picture books too and things, but we need to challenge her a little bit with the literature, but we don't have time to read 2 books. So what I've done is I've made a list of the books that I can get on audiobook from the library through the Libby app. Then we have a tablet that we can put that on, and then she can listen to that herself. And listening to audiobooks is one of the things that she absolutely loves to do. I mean, she'll burn through an audiobook in like 2 days. And she just loves it. That's her Lego time when she is getting ready. She's getting dressed in the morning, when she's going to bed at night, when she has any downtime, she is listening. So we're hoping to be able to get in an upper level book that way, and then do some comprehension stuff with her to make sure that, she understood it and see what value she got out of that book. But otherwise we'd be stuck reading 2 read-alouds, which
2 read-alouds.
Some weeks we're going to have multiple smaller read-alouds anyway, and so that would get a little unwieldy. So that's what we're hoping to do.
And then we're also going to be challenging her as well to read some of the chapter books. I mean, some of the picture books that her sister will be being read to. You tend to have like 2 or 3 picture books a week, and we're going to challenge our older learner to read those to the younger learner after, like, I have read them, and
if it's appropriate, and she can read it. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to be doing that type of challenge. So she's going to have this kind of handwriting, social studies, geography, research, and then do this reading element. And that's going to be her thing. But she's also going to do a lot of the same activities that the kindergartner is going to be doing, but just with these extra skills bolted on. So she'll sit there and listen to me read a children's book, but for her, that's easy, right? That's pretty easy. And then I can give her this extra activity when I want to go do something with my younger learner, who maybe her math or reading curriculum. I can ask my older student to then go do her, more advanced activities, and then come back to me and work with me and that type of thing. So I think that's the element that we're going to do as well. And then we're definitely, now I remember us doing a lot of food in our first Around the World journey, but in this one, I think we're going to be doing even more focused on food.
Yeah, because in that one, we had such a small child that, our daughter, when she was 5 and we were doing it, she was loving it, but it's like I had like a toddler to keep up with. And now we can really, lean into the food a bit more. Some of the things that we want to do, we have a variety of, international grocery stores and things. I don't know that we can get like everything, but I think we can get to a good amount of places if we just are a little strategic with when we go, and, maybe go and stock up for the next couple of months on a variety of snacks. We are a huge Universal Yums family. If you have not done Universal Yums, it's a snack box that you get every month. It's like $15, I think, and they give you snacks from a different country, and they have a booklet that tells you all about that country. And then there's a rating system. We have a very specific rating system. We should probably
homegrown rating system.
We should probably do, on YouTube, we should do a Universal Yums unboxing and talk about our rating system.
We'll go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Because I think the rating system is what makes it. And we've even got grandma and grandpa in on this. Nana, Papa, when they're visiting, we all do it. We rate it. So we're going to try to do...
You can't dial up the country that you're working with. So the countries tend to be shipped to you, and you just, like we just got the UK in today.
Right.
And so we're going to earmark that box because it's, it's snack food. So they can sit in the pantry for a couple months.
Right.
And so as you get your boxes in, you can kind of build a little bit of a buffer and then use them. You can't use them for every single country, but, after 6 months of buffer, you can then sprinkle them throughout.
Well, and this is one of the reasons, because we are so into food, this is one of the reasons that in my schedule, I have these kind of mileposts of these events that are happening in the countries we have to do during those times. And then I have gaps where it's just like TBD. And depending on what I get in from Yums, and I'll look at all the expirations on everything.
Country in,
yeah, I can decide what I'm going to do. And that gives me a little bit of flexibility.
That's cool.
And then with these, international grocery stores that we have around the Seattle area, what we're trying to do is collect items for our...
And build the Yum boxes.
Yum box, basically, for ourselves, and then save that up and say, like, okay, here, now we're going to do this country, and here's all the things that we've got.
Didn't we just build one? What was the one we just built?
Well,
when we went to Epcot.
When we went to Epcot, we got a few things, but I just went to an Asian grocery store not too long ago, just a few weeks ago, and I got a whole bunch of Korean stuff.
That's right.
A whole bunch of Korean snacks. And I was like, okay, cool. We're going to move up Korea on the list. So, yeah, we really love the food. So we're going to lean heavily into both the kind of making our own snack box or, saving a universal Yums box or whatever, and making more food ourselves. The other thing that I feel like we were missing last time was music.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We didn't have a lot of music. There are some good music references in Torchlight, but we just, in general, just even asking the Google Hub to just play music from this country. We just wanted to kind of be a little bit more immersive with it and kind of add to that experiential element, right? You've got these some sort of experience that we're going to really focus on having, and then the food and the music, and we're hoping that kind of gives everything more of a feel than just reading the books.
Yep.
So those are some key pieces, and I think it's interesting because we say like, oh, we're doing Build Your Library, but really we're not following a lot of it. So I think it's more that we are going to stick with the Build Your Library theme of that year. How much we actually use of it, TBD.
We're going to be using
for this year
a lot of the literature and the book suggestions, but you are right. We are pruning a number of items out of the curriculum. So it's going to be a different flow. So if you are out there and you're saying, well, I rode right with you guys as you did your around the world journey, I don't want to do this again, but I think this will have a different feel and a different look, and it may be a different, way to view this around the world journey. And then you can globetrotting the world, jet setting the world, and see how you can adapt this curriculum to fit your needs, and see how you can take the theme and then build out from there. Yeah. Using a good curriculum like the Build Your Library as kind of your help, your crutch, the thing you lean against, but also feeling empowered enough to go out and do something that's fun and unique and come up with projects and themes to help, elucidate different concepts for, whatever learners you may have, especially the older learners. And I know that was something we were talking about, like months ago, like a year ago. And we were thinking, I think this is going to be a thing, because you see people online talking about, how do I handle, 2 different age learners in the same curriculum? How do I handle that? And hopefully this curriculum and this journey that we're going to go through again will be a good window into doing just that, and how you can modify, these digital curriculums that have these general themes to fit the needs and the structure of the family and how it works best for you guys. Now, we did a really long journey last time. Took over a year. This time, I think it's going to be inside a year, right? It's looking at like 40 weeks or something.
Yeah,
less than that.
Yeah. It's not intended. It's intended to end next spring is kind of the thought right now. I mean, we'll see. I've planned, our holiday weeks off and things like that. So But we'll see how it goes. And we have a couple of times where our older daughter is going to camp too this summer. She's doing a couple of like day camps and stuff. We're just going to keep going through those times with our younger. We're not going to like pause the whole thing because it would definitely extend it. So it's not going to be as long. We aren't doing the poetry and we aren't doing a lot of the folk tales. We're doing some of the folk tales, but in general, we weren't big fans of that the last time around. It wasn't for our family. Some families just love the poetry.
We've heard your comments. We read all your comments.
Yeah. We know you love the poetry, and that's awesome. It just really wasn't for us. If we do anything for poetry, we'd do something that was more country based. All the poetry was animal based in this, and the folk tales. We have a couple of books that we really liked that we'll use, but a lot of the other ones, the folk tales, just ended up. Our kids thought they were strange, and it just didn't really work for us, but just didn't click with us. So we're going to toss those pieces out mostly. And then the other thing is that Build Your Library does this heavy emphasis on animals. So they use the Wild Animal Atlas, and you're supposed to like choose an animal every week and research that animal.
It's specific to the country.
Right.
Or the region, kind of, yeah.
And we gave this quite a bit of thought.
Yeah. And you came up with this idea. It's a great idea.
Yeah, well, because our older daughter really wasn't into kind of like the animal of the week thing. That just didn't really resonate with her. I don't know if it's just because she's not really a big animal type kid.
She's not really, it's not really her jam.
Yeah, it just didn't really, I don't know. It just didn't click. So what we're going to do this time to do things a little bit differently, but still bring in a lot of those elements, is we're going to focus on biomes. So there's differing opinions about how many biomes there are. I think, there's anywhere from like 8 to 17 biomes or something. So there's a bunch of ways to break them up, and the scientific community does not all agree. After my Google searching has told me that they all disagree about how many biomes there are. But I think that right now we have something like maybe 11 or something biomes. I don't know the exact number. So what we're going to do is when we go through and study a country, we are going to pick a biome that relates to that country. And obviously some countries have many biomes, but
Peru is a great example.
Right,
of that, yeah.
So many biomes. But we're going to pick one to focus on for that week. And what we're going to do is we're going to build out kind of information about this biome and do just a piece of this. And so, but it won't be, rather than just like a flavor of the week, it's going to be a piece of something we'll come back to. So by the end of it, the goal is that we're going to build out a whole binder that will be filled with information about all of these biomes. But each, like let's say deserts biome, we're going to maybe cover it in 2 weeks, and then we're going to hit it again in another couple of months, and we're going to hit it again later, So when we study Northern Africa, we're going to do desert. And when we study the southwest of the US, we're going to do desert. And so we'll keep picking it up. And each time I'm hoping that looping will help to bolt on just a little bit more information about the plants and the animals and that climate, so that they can gain a deeper understanding. Because the thing that we noticed the first time around was we could bring up an animal months later and our daughter would be like, huh? Like she would not have remembered anything about the animal of the week because it was just such a fleeting thing. And we're hoping that if we can, take something and just build upon it, that by the end of this whole thing, they will have a better understanding of that entire piece. Maybe they won't remember the specific animals, but they'll know something about deserts and about rainforests. And I think it's going to be easier to find books and things on that because a lot of those aren't, specific to a country. They talk about that entire type. It also aligns really well with any of the planet Earth type, those wonderful David Attenborough documentaries that sometimes put me to sleep, but are amazing. They are amazing if I just watch them like fully awake. They're really good. They tend to do that. They tend to talk about, like, they'll have an episode all about forests and they'll have another episode all about deserts and that kind of thing.
And within that episode, they will country hop across the continents and talk about this country, and they'll showcase, where these animals are thriving here in this ecosystem here, but they're all under that same general umbrella of like rainforest or deserts and things like that. And I agree with you. And then here, this is kind of our replacement science, kind of a quasi science, but it's also specific to
about geography.
Yeah, but it's more of a geography thing. This is also another place where you can bolt on deeper learning and more complex science related stuff and, have more requirements of your older student to, write, read, learn, to memorize things and to, echo back that information to you in a more comprehensive way than what you would expect, say, a kindergartner to have. And so you can really gear out the rigor and the mastery more here. I remember the first time we went through the Around the World journey, there wasn't really a deep expectation that, your learner is going to be remembering, dates and figures and all that stuff. No. And you go into that knowing this is a kindergartner and I'm not expecting them to remember a lot of this stuff, but you do hope that they take some things away.
Yeah.
And I now, as I have my older learner, I can see that she can retain information better and I need to expect more of her and things of that nature. And this is going to be a really good experiment for me because I feel like this is one of the first times where I'm going to be expecting her to remember things. Like I'm going to want, grandma at Christmas to ask her, hey, so-and-so, what did you learn, about this biome? And for my daughter to be able to say, oh, well, I learned about the water cycle and I learned about the flow of the Amazon River and I learned about the Congo River and I learned about how people live along the river and things of that nature. And I want her to be able to remember these things. So,
yeah, I think that's true. We started to kind of expect a little bit more from her. We talked about it in our ancients.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. And I'm even hoping that our younger one is going to take something away. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I like about doing biomes is that if possible, I'd like over this next year to try to visit as many of those biomes as we can. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we are so fortunate to have so many biomes so close, right? I mean,
and a lot of people don't realize that. Yeah, like we have a rainforest that is about, it's a temperate rainforest, but it's a rainforest nonetheless, about 4 hours away. And then we have obviously maritime climate where we are right now.
Right. There's mountains.
Mountains as well.
There's fresh water, there's salt water, there's deserts just across the mountains.
Exactly.
If we drove far enough up into Canada, we could get into some tundra type, so so we have other, kinds of forests and
we're very lucky to have a lot of biodiversity and geological diversity here in the area that we can, enjoy.
Right. And so what would be really cool is if we could add in some, experiences around those biomes. And so maybe, some of those weeks where we're studying a country, maybe that's our experience for the week. And it isn't so much about the experience of that country, but that we're going to get out and do something around that biome. We're so fortunate to have national parks here that have just great visitor centers with all kinds of science information about the areas and stuff. So that's what we're kind of hoping to lean into a little more, and maybe a few trips to the zoo as well to help flesh out the biomes that we can't visit with some of the animals that are there. That's kind of how we're hoping to bring in the kind of animal science part of it. We'll see how that works. And, we'll be vlogging this just like we did the last time. So, if you're interested to follow along and see what we've learned and kind of we're also, as we're hopping, we're also doing 2 weeks or sometimes 3 weeks, depending on these different countries. And we're really just taking a subset of what was our favorite from the last round. So we aren't visiting everywhere that we did the last time, because if we did, it would take the same amount of time. And there were some places that we visited where there just was a real lack of literature for that area, or it was challenging, or it just didn't really capture our kids' interest as much, or our interest as much. So we decided to kind of scrub down to our favorites, the places that we felt were the most memorable when we finished, the most impactful, and we're going to focus there. So it's a truncated version, but I hope that it's going to be a richer, deeper experience of each of those places.
And one of the things that I've noticed, and we talked about this, I think, the other day, is that we're not following the book. And the book is, Build Your Library Around the World is wonderfully laid out. It's all right there in front of you, and you just follow along what you're doing. Because we're doing so much custom stuff this time, we're almost going to need like kind of a crib sheet of, what do I have to do every week?
Yeah.
So we have to kind of build our own, sometimes in board games, they have the steps cards, like first do this, then do this.
Yeah, little reminder cards.
And I'm going to need like a nice reminder card to tell me what I'm doing every week, because I'll forget and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's right, we have to do the biomes this week. Oh yeah, I forgot, we have to go do these things. So it's there's a little bit of maintenance things that are going to be a little bit different, and hopefully we can show you, whatever systems we put in place in order to keep that going and keep that successful. And I think that's one of the main things I've noticed about homeschooling as long as we have had is that having in place that kind of, the guides so that you can be successful and put yourself in the right position to be successful, I think is something that you have to learn through the time. Otherwise, you're going to get lost. You're going to forget where you are. You're going to have days that fall into other days that fall into other days, and all of a sudden you haven't done anything for the week. And what are we doing, right? And I always feel bad about losing a few days here and there, and so I really want to make sure we stay on schedule here. We've also talked about we were doing this country is this week, or these two countries are this week, and we're really going to be a little bit more free form. If we feel we have done everything for this country in 4 days, because we had a real nice stretch of effort. And
it's a Friday through Tuesday. Okay.
And we're going to move on to the next country. And so we're not going to be so rigid about, doing 1 week for one country, or 1 week for two countries, or whatever it might be. And I think that's going to give us a little bit more free form to say, hey, let's take an extra day or so here because we're having a good time. Or, hey, I think we've exhausted this. The kids are starting to get a little distracted. Let's move on to the next country. And hopefully we'll inform you guys on that and what we're doing. Is there anything else that we're doing here? I think that's the bulk of what we're doing. Yeah,
I think that's the bulk. Bringing in some new books, the biomes,
we talked about dinner and a movie kicking off the start of a country.
Yeah, that's what we'd like to do. Kind of, the goal would be to start it at the beginning of the week, and that's what we'll kind of try to do. We're just the goal would be to do like dinner and a movie on Sunday night to start with, just jumping into the flavor of that culture right away. But, if it doesn't work out and it's a different day, it's not the end of the world. We're just not going to beat ourselves up about like, we got to get done by Friday, because we definitely, some of these countries we just adored. We had a wonderful time there. Our kids just, even when our youngest was just a little preschooler, she loved these countries too. There's some that had a wealth of resources and
tons of kids movies and whatnot.
Our kids, I just, for example, I remember the last time our kids wanted to listen to like all 5 Paddington books because they were just so into it. And I don't want to stifle us this time because we have such a schedule to keep, because we've got to do all these countries. And, each time we go longer than that just means that we've, expanding the whole thing. I think we're going to be free to make cuts. If we end up spending longer somewhere, we may cut something else out. We're trying to do the best of the best here, the things that have the most interest to us. And so we hope that you guys will join us on this next globe-trotting, setting, schooling
around
journey.
The fun place, time.
Help us name it. Yes, help us name it. We get our eternal grats.
We need like a good like 12 letter acronym that spells some word or something like that.
Yeah. So, but we're excited to get started. We're definitely excited to jump in and do the food and the media and have some of these experiences. Now that, one of the reasons we want to do the experience thing, and we encourage you too to try to find ways to add experience. After you've talked about taking both of the kids to Legoland yourself a couple of days this last spring, and just how you're not intimidated to do that now anymore. And as our younger is now older, like we just want to get out more and
also see what's available in our own backyard.
And it could be something small.
There's a lot that we haven't done and haven't seen and explored and whatnot. And I think that's a great opportunity. I think this is going to be another great run here, and I hope everybody enjoys it, and hope you guys enjoy the journey. And so we'll keep you guys posted over on YouTube. Go ahead and hit subscribe and the notify button, and you'll get those videos into your inbox here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about this overview again on YouTube, but we're also gonna show some of the resources that we're hoping to use in some of the games and things. We're gonna lean a lot heavier into games this time around since our kids are older now. So
especially when the 5-year-old bugs you every day, mommy, let's play a game.
Oh yeah, she loves games. This was always my dream to raise my own little game group.
And yeah, you have.
And I have my own game group that listens to Broadway. I'm in heaven. So
no lie, guys. The Yodos were walking around the house yesterday, and Phantom of the Opera was playing, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh, this warms my heart. So so stay tuned. Join us on this yet another journey, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!